Mime tries to scare Siegfried with images of Fafnir, but to no avail. He tells Siegfried to station himself outside the cave. The dragon will soon have to come out to drink from the spring. Siegfried waits, wondering about his mother and father. He's never seen a woman. Do all mothers die when they give birth to sons? He's soothed by the sounds of the forest, especially the songs of the birds. If only Siegfried could understand what the birds were saying. Surely they could tell him a thing or two. Siegfried tries making a reed pipe and calling to them, but it's a dismal failure, and he throws it away. Instead, he takes up his horn and plays. The sound wakes the dragon, who lumbers out of his cave. The dragon is contemptuous, but Siegfried still shows no sign of fear. Fafnir issues the challenge, and a terrific battle begins. The death blow has been struck. Notung has found the dragon's heart. But as he dies, Fafnir realizes that Siegfried is only an innocent pawn of someone cleverer and much more sinister. With his dying breath, he warns Siegfried of Mime's plan to kill him. As Siegfried withdraws his sword, he feels the dragon's blood burning his skin. Without thinking, he puts his hand to his mouth and tastes the blood, which, as it turns out, also has magic powers. To his delight, Siegfried discovers that he can now understand the songs of the birds. One bird in particular has a message for him. The Nibelung's treasure hoard is now his, it tells him. The gold, the Tarnhelm, and the ring. The bird sings its song to very free rhythms, not like the regular patterns of human folk song. But the shape of this free melody is strikingly similar to the liquid phrase that the Rhine maidens sing at the beginning of Das Rheingold. The connection is quite deliberate. Wagner is telling us that the birds and the Rhine maidens are all voices of nature. The bird may have none of the Rhine maiden's cruelty, and it offers Siegfried the most important piece of information he's yet received. But it's worth noting that it tells him nothing about the curse of the ring. Again, nature is portrayed as having a morally ambiguous, or perhaps one should say neutral, quality. Certainly, it's a mistake to judge nature according to human values of good and evil. But Siegfried knows nothing of all this. He thanks the bird and goes into the cave. As yet, he has absolutely no idea to what use the treasure might be put. Nevertheless, he's intrigued enough to follow the bird's advice and take it for himself. Meanwhile, Mime returns, finding both the body of the dragon and, rather less welcome, his brother Alberich very much alive. The two quarrel furiously about who is to have the ring. But then Siegfried emerges from the cave and Alberich makes a strategic retreat. Mime tries to get Siegfried to take the poisoned drink, but the bird warns Siegfried of Mime's real intentions. The dragon's blood will also give him the power to read Mime's thoughts, it tells him. Sure enough, Siegfried hears Mime mulling over his murderous private scheme, and in disgust he strikes him dead. In the distance, Alberich can be heard laughing mockingly. In need of rest, Siegfried stretches himself out under a tree. Despite his victory over Fafner, all he feels is loneliness. He has no parents, no family. Mime may not have been much of a companion, but he was the only one he had. Siegfried asks the bird for advice, and this time it tells him of something that stirs an unsettling new emotion within him. On a high rock, surrounded by flames, sleeps a woman, Brunhilde. If Siegfried can waken her, she will be his. Since he knows no fear, Siegfried will be able to pass through the flames unscathed. The bird flies on ahead to show Siegfried the way, and full of excitement, he follows. The ending of Act 2 is one of the few genuinely light-hearted moments in The Ring. All that seems to matter is Siegfried's joy at his new discoveries and his freedom from Mime. But in the background, the wheel of fate is turning faster and faster. The prelude to Act 3 conveys this sense of mounting urgency, the working of the laws of the universe that not even the chief of the gods can alter. Even Wotan's downward-thrusting spear motif is caught up in the music's irresistible tragic motion. The upward surging figure that launches the prelude and propels it forward is a faster version of the motif associated with Erda, the earth goddess. We first met her in Das Rheingold, when she appeared to warn Wotan to give up the ring. You may remember that Wotan tried to follow her at the time, but was held back by Fricka. Now he's come to meet Erda again. It seems Wotan hasn't quite given up hope that cosmic tragedy can be averted. Perhaps Erda can tell him how. Is it possible to slow down a turning wheel? But Erda is confused. At first she's not even sure who her interrogator is, though it turns out that Wotan has fathered a child through her, none other than Brunhilde herself, asleep on her rock nearby. Go and ask her, Erda tells him. Wotan understands that it's useless. The wheel will go on turning to the appointed end, the downfall of the gods. Wotan's only recourse is to will that end for himself. Siegfried must wake Brunhilde, and she, in turn, will redeem the world. Wotan bids Erda to return to her sleep, and prepares to meet Siegfried. Eventually Siegfried arrives. Wotan questions him as to the nature of his mission, but Siegfried grows increasingly impatient. He tries to go forward to Brunhilde, but Wotan bars the way with his spear. At this, Siegfried guesses that this is the man who broke Nothung and caused his father's death. In fury, he strikes the spear with his sword. When spear and sword clashed in Die Walküre, it was Nothung that shattered. This time it's Wotan's spear that is smashed to pieces. Again, Wagner underlines this momentous event through his use of the orchestra, and most of all through the technique of motivic development. The downward thrusting spear motif disintegrates before our very ears. You can almost see the spear falling, dissolving into pitiful fragments. Erda's motif rises tremulously on strings, then falls. The falling motion is now clearly fixed to the idea of the god's downfall, and we'll hear a lot more of it in Götterdämmerung. Go your way, I cannot stop you, sings Wotan, and vanishes in utter darkness. The way is now clear for Siegfried. As he moves closer to Brunhilde's rock, he sees the blazing circle that surrounds her. The heat is conveyed by a dazzling motif previously associated with the fire god Loge. As Siegfried walks through the fire, his horn call sounds out on the orchestral horns. The two leitmotifs, fire and horn call, clash thrillingly. It's as though we can see a human form impossibly outlined against the searing flames. Safely through the flames, Siegfried gazes around him and sees Brunhilde's horse Grane and Brunhilde herself lying in full armour. He's perplexed. It must be a man lying there. But as he removes her breastplate, he realizes that this is something he's never seen before. Startled, he cries out, "Das ist kein Mann." That's not a man. Whether Wagner intended this to be funny or not, it certainly can be, even in the most sensitive staging. But something very important has happened here. For the first time in his life, Siegfried has experienced fear. Dazed, he falls forward, and in doing so, he touches Brunhilde's lips with his own. Brunhilde opens her eyes and slowly awakes to one of the most visionary orchestral passages in the whole of the Ring. Newly awakened, Brunhilde greets the sun and the earth around her, then turns her attention to Siegfried. She tells him that she has always loved him. Still confused, Siegfried thinks she must be his mother, but Brunhilde explains that she is the one who strove on his behalf and protected him when he was yet unborn. Filled with love, Siegfried tries to embrace her, but she draws back, realizing that if their love is consummated, she will lose the proud independence she enjoyed as a Valkyrie. But gradually, her defences melt in the presence of the man she knows she's destined to love. The music registers her newly awakened tenderness with this lovely string theme as Brunhilde begins to confess her feelings. This theme is not destined to become a leading motif in The Ring. In fact, after this scene, we never hear it again. But Wagner must have felt that it had a potential which he hadn't fully tapped here. As he was finishing the score of Siegfried, he made that theme the basis of a beautiful short work for chamber orchestra, Siegfried Idyll. It was a present for his wife Cosima on the birth of his first son, whom naturally enough was christened Siegfried. Regaining something of his old fearlessness, the Siegfried of the opera manages to overcome Brunhilde's anxieties. They were meant for each other, literally. Like many young lovers, they become blind to the fate of the world in the heat of their passion. But in this case, the outcome will be truly apocalyptic, as Brunhilde at least partly understands. Together, Siegfried and Brunhilde welcome the ending of the rule of the gods in a wildly abandoned love duet. It culminates in a phrase that intertwines words like the bodies of the lovers themselves. Leuchtende Liebe, lachende Tod. Shining love, laughing death, as the opera surges to its conclusion. It's often presumed that Wagner set out to write The Ring on a massive scale from the start. In fact, although his initial plans were ambitious enough, his first thought was of writing only one substantial opera, to be called Siegfried's Tod, Siegfried's Death. The name was later changed to Götterdämmerung, Twilight of the Gods. But Wagner soon realized that his libretto assumed too much knowledge on the audience's part, so he decided to preface Götterdämmerung with another opera about Siegfried's youth, the opera that he eventually called Siegfried. But even that wasn't enough, so the libretto of The Ring carried on extending itself backwards until it reached the colossal dimensions that we know today. Having enlarged his Ring libretto in this way, Wagner didn't revise the texts of the later operas, partly because he'd already published them. Should he have done so? Well, it's possible that he might have trimmed the first scene of Götterdämmerung, for instance. Here we meet the three Norns, the daughters of the earth goddess Erda. They spin the golden rope of time, past, present, and future. Wagner originally intended this scene as a kind of story so far introduction, to provide important strands in the history of The Ring that we might not otherwise know. Adding the three extra opera librettos, Das Rheingold, Die Walküre, and Siegfried, made a fair bit of the Norns' commentary superfluous, at least when it comes to understanding the plot. But was Wagner wrong to keep it? It may make Götterdämmerung one of the longest dramatic works in the history of Western theatre, but musically this scene is remarkable, and few would want to be without it. A brooding, doom-laden atmosphere is established, which throws the blissful abandonment of Brunhilde and Siegfried's love music at the end of Siegfried into ironic relief. In terms of passing on information, it may not be entirely necessary, but the way in which Wagner sets it to music makes it essential. As you may have realized from that extract, the opening of Götterdämmerung is a transformation of those magical Brunhilde's awakening in Siegfried. But how the emotional colour has changed, especially when it comes to the third great wave. Here there's no ecstatically arching violin line. Instead, the third wind chord twists into the death motif from Die Walküre, then dissolves in weird harmonies for muted strings full of foreboding. It is night. The three Norns are weaving the rope of destiny and questioning each other about what it tells them. There is one important thing imparted by the Norns that we wouldn't have learnt elsewhere. Wotan has cut the great sacred ash tree into logs and has piled them around Valhalla. When they burst into flames, the fortress will be destroyed, and with it, the reign of the gods. But this scene isn't really about conveying facts. It builds slowly but steadily to a heart-stopping climax. As the Norns weave the rope, feeling for the next stage in the world's story, one of them asks what the final outcome of Alberich's curse will be. At this point, the rope snaps. Es riss, it tears, they all cry, as the curse motif sounds on bass trumpet. This is the end of our wisdom, the Norns sing in unison. The end of the gods is very near. The sun begins to rise, and the motifs associated with Siegfried and Brunhilde are heard in the orchestra. Then the lovers emerge from a cave, still intoxicated with each other and the joy of their young love. She has taught him all her wisdom. He has initiated her into full womanhood. A new theme, rising in ardent sequences, expresses Brunhilde's new consciousness of herself, vulnerable, deprived of her godlike powers, but enriched by the experience of human love. Then, in response, a majestically expanded new version of Siegfried's horn call indicates her lover, showing how he too has grown. Brunhilde now gives a moving display of one well-known piece of ancient wisdom, that if you love someone truly, you must give them freedom. She encourages Siegfried to go out into the world and perform great deeds in keeping with his new, full-grown heroic status. Siegfried agrees, but leaves the ring with Brunhilde as a token of his undying faithfulness. The lovers sing another impassioned duet as they prepare to part. This sweeps on into one of the most famous orchestral interludes in the Ring, Siegfried's Rhine Journey, at once a symphonic development of themes associated with the hero and a stirring depiction of some of his great deeds. Siegfried's Rhine Journey is, on the whole, aspiring, confident, full of combative energy, just like the hero himself. But at the end of that extract, we heard a falling sequence of chords that we've come across earlier in the Ring. It's the same falling figure that was played as Wotan left the stage for the last time in Siegfried, the figure associated with the downfall of the gods. So Wagner's orchestral interlude also reminds us of the one thing which Siegfried seems blissfully unaware of, the conflagration in which this great tragic cycle of operas will end. Siegfried's Rhine Journey leads us out of the prologue into the real first act. And now there's another dramatic change of mood. The music becomes sombre, martial, as we arrive at the dwelling of the Gibichungs, a human tribe this time, situated on the banks of the Rhine. The nominal leaders of this community are Gunther and his sister Gutruna, but it's not long before we begin to suspect that neither of them is quite up to the job. Their half-brother Hagen is apparently content to take the role of advisor, but there's something rather sinister about Hagen, and as he gives them the benefit of his counselling, it becomes clear that he's the real power behind the throne. Hagen's advice seems practical enough. If Gunther and Gutruna are to retain the respect of their subjects, they should both marry, the sooner the better. Hagen has an audacious plan. Gunther is to have Brunhilde, and Gutruna shall wed Siegfried. This seems incredible to Gunther and his sister, but the cunning Hagen has it all under control. He will give Siegfried a potion that will make him forget Brunhilde and fall for the first woman he sees, which will, of course, be Gutruna. Gunther may not be able to penetrate the flames that still encircle Brunhilde's rock, but Siegfried can. Using the magic of the Tarnhelm, Siegfried can take on the appearance of Gunther and do his wooing for him. Siegfried arrives to the sound of his now familiar horn call. Then comes the terrific passage in which Hagen sings warm words of greeting, but to the motif of the curse. We realise that Hagen isn't simply going to bewitch Siegfried and use him for his own purposes. The appearance of the motif warns us that Hagen will be the instrument of Siegfried's death, the fulfilment of Alberic's curse on all those who wear the ring. It all goes according to plan. Siegfried falls for Gutruna, and under the continuing influence of Hagen's potion, he swears blood brotherhood with Gunther, promising to fetch Brunhilde on his behalf. The two men set off together for Brunhilde's rock. Left alone, Hagen meditates on his real purpose. When the happily oblivious Siegfried brings Brunhilde back with him, Hagen will have the ring in his sights. Meanwhile, Brunhilde is sitting at the entrance to her cave, contemplating the ring. Gathering storm clouds announce the arrival of Waltraud,